I don't think I think it was shared. Hold on, I'm reading through their big block of stuff. So on June 16th, they were notified,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
and it seems like they have IP addresses first seen on
15th of
March.
May.
Yeah.
What?
No, they have IP addresses first seen
Oh.
on the 9th of March.
Yep.
If you're looking at that Microsoft rundown, then they
Oh, I see
say
it now. Yeah.
that May 15th is when they sort of shifted infrastructure. Is when the attack adversaries shifted.
Mhm.
I like how they just slipped those March and April IPs in there, like in between everything else.
Yeah, in between everything else, they're like, we're just gonna, in the text, we're gonna talk about these other dates, but in the actual table of information, you're like, wait a minute, there's some activity first seen in March.
Mhm.
It's like, yeah, skim over that.
I'm testing that theory we talked about just now, and I just while after starting the stream, I just tried turning it on for LinkedIn to see if it even works.
Does it?
I don't know.
Like you're like, I screwed up, John. Like, oh God.
What?
Oh, I streamed to LinkedIn, John. Oh God, no. And
Oh, no,
we had 1,900 people view the stream. Oh,
So good. So good.
Well, I did say it was a fortuitous accident or something like that, but yeah,
something like that. You set it up well. You set it up well.
Yeah, actually, let me go look here. LinkedIn. Let's see. So for those of you who are listening, we haven't done like minutes and minutes of pre-show banter in a while, so we thought we'd start. But you're not listening to the news yet, so hang out. Come join us in Discord. We're over in the discord.gg/BHIS, and we're in the live streams, webcast, and live chat. You can chat with us every Monday there over in Discord, so join us. Or don't. We're not your mom. Whatever. LinkedIn.
So I've been out with parental leave for the last 5 or 6 weeks, and I tried so very, very hard to try to ignore all things security and technology, news, and everything. So I'm jumping straight back in to help talk about this stuff a little bit. But I kept neighbors and friends that kept hearing news about stuff, and they text me or they talk to me like, "Hey, did you hear about this thing?" I was like, "No," and don't tell me about it either. But don't want to think about it.
I don't like it.
Really hard to get away from.
I got to shut off notifications. Yeah, I'm just trying to get caught up because I've been without cell coverage or anything for 4 days.
Can you hear me now?
We
can.
Yep.
There we go.
Yeah, and John, that totally worked. It's streaming to LinkedIn after we started. While it was streaming, I was just like, turn this on.
We're actually, hold on. We're actually getting the comments from LinkedIn too, I think. Or is that YouTube?
As soon as we integrate, so the integration for comments and all that would come in. It's just you have to turn on it connecting. That's all. It's configured to do it. Yeah. Let me stop that.
This all sounds scary.
We're happy.
It all is terrifying. Social media is just a train wreck.
Yeah, if you're watching us from LinkedIn, say hi. Let's see if it streams.
See if the texts show up here.
I mean, I guess
live debugging.
Well, no, we're just trying some stuff in pre-show banter, playing with technology.
Just keep looking at Cameron's pantry. I think I see peanut butter, so we're cool.
I can give you a tour if you want, but it's way too hot to work from any other room.
Peanut butter and jelly.
Yeah, it's better than just that single bottle of barbecue sauce,
or just like a single malt liquor. It's like that's it. I'm like, oh, jeez. Oh. Can you stream on Twitter? I think you can only stream on Twitter for short periods of time, right?
You used to be able to do all kinds of cool stuff with Twitter.
Wait, people still use Twitter? I haven't spent much time at Twitter in a long time. I want to apologize. I used to spend too much time there, but now I don't have that problem anymore.
No. All right, so I'm gonna try to see. If I go into this now, and comments are here. So let's see. Testing comments. There's people commenting in LinkedIn. I can see that now because I'm in the stream. But with
see YouTube, Discord,
I just put in. Oh, wow. Okay. It just assumed I was Black Hills because I have administration. It was fine. I just put testing comments and not
Okay.
like down with the patriarchy or whatever.
Deb also said,
Wait,
Wait, what?
I don't know if you look at the makeup of this webcast. I don't know if it's down with the
I mean, look,
patriarchy.
I'm actually
I am
kind of
out of
down
place.
for down with the
Yeah.
patriarchy. I'm just saying that
Cameron's like,
All right.
the
Cool.
longer I stay away from Twitter, the happier I am. That's a good comment.
All right, let's get this up here. We are approaching zero barrier here, in which for those of you who are on, you're going to get a fun little surprise as well. We're going to play a video at the top of this that hopefully you'll like. And if you don't, I will be sad. And then, I mean, we don't want a sad Ian.
No, I don't want sad Ian. Speaking of which, let's bring on the crooked finger.
Oh yeah, let's do that. All right, let's go.
Oh.
Here. What? No, it's almost. It's almost 30. I'm gonna do it right on 30. We're gonna be like pros or something. I think maybe. Oh. We did this last time during the webcast. We're like,
It's just a lot of
and then we
buttons.
just stared at it for the longest minute.
Just a lot of buttons. We're all watching Ian.
Well, now I'm bored. I'm gonna do it.
Now
Anyway.
it's just awkward.
Yeah, here we go.
You better get right, pal, because we got a Blue Team Summit to run on August 23rd.
Ian and Basin Blue Team. Two hackers on a mission to run a Blue Team Summit over 3 days. You see, me and Asim have an understanding. We're on a mission to log. Forensics drive's got a lot of space. Scan it.
Yeah, if my estimations are correct, we're getting pretty close to the Blue Team Summit.
That's 2 days of training and 1 day of talks, right?
Yup.
Did you see two folks run by saying they were running a Blue Team Summit?
Yeah, I just sent them down there.
Thank you.
Ian Meyer.
How much for your encryption keys?
Basin Janslerd.
Maybe after the summit we could hang out or something?
Are you the police?
Yeah, no ma'am, we are hackers.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Black Hills Information Security talking about news. And as you just saw, we had that fantastic video intro for the Blue Team Summit. Please check it out. We'll have the link down below so you can see it wherever you're getting all of this. It is not a Michael Bay. Ian said it was a Michael Bay film. There's part of me that just died inside. Like somebody sees the Blues Brothers and they're like, is that Michael Bay? It's like, oh no. But no, I love that. No, ma'am, we are hackers. It's going to be cool. It's going to be an awesome summit. We love doing these online things. And as always, this particular podcast, webcast, whatever it is you're seeing here on LinkedIn, whatever we call it on the LinkedIn stream or whatever, is brought to you by Black Hills Information Security and Antisyphon Security Training. If you need to get hacked, call BHIS. If you want to prevent yourself from being hacked, then call BHIS because we have SOC services. If you think you've been hacked, call BHIS because we do IR. If you'd like to stop being hacked, call us because we have SOC services, which I already said, so we're going to say that twice. And then if you would like to learn how to hack or learn how not to get hacked, check out Antisyphon Security Training. And that's about all I've got to say about that. Now, today, I am joined by a group of people that have actually bathed, I assume, in the last 4 or 5 days. I went into the woods last week and I have been completely out of any internet coverage, no text messaging, no Twitter, none of that. I've been up in the middle of the Bighorn Mountains, and I come out, and of course, the big story is Microsoft was hacked. And I'm not even gonna guys, I don't even think I have to quantify that. Do I? Do I have to say that they were hacked? I mean, there was a breach of Microsoft in some fashion or another. And we're going to get into that. But I have Ian, who did a fantastic job with that. The tent smelt like sliced onions. No, James, as I mentioned before, I got so stinky that I literally started to think that I smelt like golden grams or cornflakes or something, which I think is my brain rewiring itself at some level, saying this is too horrible. We have James
fermenting,
B.
John.
It's fermenting, right? We have James B. We have Chris. We have Alex. We have Mike. Came in at the last moment. We have Penn. We have Florida Man, and we have curlifconfig.me on today.
That's my IP.
That's my IP.
I know everyone's IP address. If you run that command, it'll tell you what it is.
My IP address is 127.0.0.1 as well.
Yeah, I saw the
also have
pen test
127.0.0.2, 3, 4, and 5. So my ISP charges me a lot for all of that. So let's get into this. So like I said, I don't think that we're going to pull any punches. Microsoft was hacked. Is that what we're leaning with this entire thing? Because I know that there was a theory in one of the articles, I think it may have been like Wired, where somebody else said it's possible one of the 25 tenants got hacked. And then there was an abuse where they could pivot to other tenants. For those of you that don't know, there was a signing key that was compromised that allowed people to create their own access tokens, or the attackers, who we presume to be the Chinese, to create their own access tokens. The group, I think, was Storm 0558. I think it's right there in very small print.
Clever
There's
name.
a Jake Williams quote. He's a friend of BHIS, so I'll just read it.
Go
we
for
put
it.
our trust in passports, and someone stole a passport printing machine.
I think that sums it up
Yeah.
right there.
Right. Yes.
I mean, that's how cloud security works, right? You just have a passport printing machine, and then you're done.
I feel like there's way more questions than answers right now about how
Yes,
that
I
happened.
agree. It's bad. Let's just say it's bad.
I think it's trying to determine what varying levels of bad. And I think that we need to kind of break down for the audience, what are the possibilities of what has happened? Okay.
No one has figured out how they got the key. Is that correct?
Microsoft is not answering that question yet.
Oh, yeah.
So that's the key. How did the attackers get the key? And if we're looking at how they got that key, if we're looking at the options as they stand, option A, there is a vulnerability in Microsoft Office 365 that allowed the Chinese attackers, Storm and some random number, to take advantage of some built-in system to cut themselves their own key. That's bad. Okay. The other possibility is there was a compromise of internal Microsoft resources. Let's say an internal, like a spear phishing attack. They were able to pivot internally in Microsoft.
Maybe it was a bribe. A bribe.
It could have been. Okay, that's number 3. So either there was a compromise of the cloud service, a compromise through traditional means. There was a suitcase full of money. And the third theory, which I disagree with, but I think it's a valid theory that needs to be investigated, is there is some kind of violation of how those access tokens are granted, that if you gain access to one person's token or the ability to generate keys in one of the 25 tenants that was compromised, you were able to somehow leverage that to gain access to other.
One thing I did read is that the validation of that certificate was improper, and that's the one thing that they fixed, right? But they didn't talk about how they created that certificate. Like, it was still valid, but it shouldn't have been valid across those tenants. That's what I'm trying to say, or that's what it was saying in the articles.
So I think that those are the options as they sit right now. And I kind of want to work around the horn. I'll start with Ian, since you're on the upper left-hand corner. What are your thoughts? I mean, what does this smell like looking for Microsoft's press release and the astounding lack of data that we're getting?
Personally, I think it's probably a misconfiguration somewhere that it's the worst thing in the world is to be considered an expert in the field. And they are. Let's not take away from what Microsoft Research Center does and the amount of attacks that they're handling. But it does speak to the idea that if you've got these, like Jake said, these passport printing machines, if you've got ones that can be set up to print up passports for the United States and Canada and the UK, why does that exist? Why did you even go through and do that? That shouldn't exist on any level.
Making your own passport's a lot of work, Ian. So we just stole Canada's passport
So
and
we
put
steal the
eagles on it.
printers.
But we've seen that, right, in our testing where we've tested cloud security technologies where there are certain things like access tokens and keys that are being used across multiple different tenants, right? I think one of the examples I think that jumps right up like very quickly is LastPass, right? So LastPass, they were using AES electronic codebook mode, and they were reusing that. And that's not quite the same thing as a key, but it allows you to basically pull down the secrets and find all of the people that have the exact same passwords because they're going to have the same encrypted ciphertext, right? So you have those same vulnerabilities that exist. James, what are your thoughts? I mean, you're jumping in here, and love to have you hang out. I'd love to get your thoughts too.
Yeah. Well, so, they talk about all the mitigation and hardening steps that they took, and they're still insisting, okay, no customer action is needed. But somebody is going to start asking the question of, hey, how can we look in our audit logs? How can we look in our SIM to know if anything's there? And it would be really nice if Microsoft would at least say, outside of just, indications of compromise, bunch of IPs that are probably not even useful anymore, just saying, hey, go in here, and if you see anything weird, then investigate. But there's so much data in the audit logs, we should be able to see something to prove or disprove it.
And James, I want to table that because we have to come back to that, because I think that that's one of the key issues that I want to rant on. Is it's like, we should just check your logs, and Microsoft's, well, if you want those logs,
pay extra,
you got to pay. So we're going to come back to that.
License.
So they're just like, oh, we'll tell you if you're screwed.
Yeah, we'll tell you if you're compromised. Chris, your thoughts, man?
Yeah, so I mean, I was just reading through it a bit before we got on here, and I think what would be interesting of looking at this particular threat actor is what they have also been tied to, excuse me, in the past, where they typically have an interest in more media companies and think tanks and telecommunications, according to the write-ups that I saw. So what would they have to gain for targeting where this was discovered, which I think it was, you said.
And I think that that's a really good idea. If you pull your mic a little bit closer, the compression is doing you no favors whatsoever. But we'll never know, right? Like, I think the people that are doing the investigation will look at the 25 different organizations. What was the data that was accessed, and then correlate that. Alex, your thoughts?
My thoughts on this was, it was interesting how it was snuck out on Friday and not in any of their main threat feeds. So it sort of seemed like a release, and Microsoft sort of kind of concealing things. And reading over some of the statements from people that have been contacted, because Microsoft said in their article, you've been impacted, we'll contact you. Looking over some of the information, the people that have been contacted say, yeah, they don't have any actionable information that they're giving us. They're just like, hey, you got hacked, and a bunch of wordsmithing and padding around it to not say anything further.
Well, they got scooped, didn't they? Didn't they get scooped by the State Department? Like,
that's what I was going to say. I don't think Microsoft was the original people that detected it, right? It was the State Department that did, which I want to know who the hell detected this attack that wasn't Microsoft. Yep. And I would like you to send your resume to me.
That's what I was going to say. We pay better than the State Department. You know that.
Yeah, we'll pay better than the State Department.
So I wonder, I'll when I have my chance, I'll say, go ahead.
But I also, that State Department comment, this sounds very conspiratorial from my perspective, as I'm prone to dropping into from time to time. It almost sounds to me like they were watching the attack on the other side from the Chinese, because we're in their networks, right? And they're seeing this, and they're like, holy hell, somebody get Microsoft on the phone now.
Yeah,
and you can't say the NSA detected it. You can't say the NRO. Well, the NRO wouldn't, they're SIGINT. But you can't say like the FBI or the NSA or DISA or any of those organizations detected it, because that kind of violates, like means and methods and how we actually collect data. So you can say, well, there's just this guy at the State Department, Bill is a fantastic security. He was looking at these access, because he reads those things at night, and he totally just caught it just on a whim. And then it protects the level of intelligence gathering.
If our intelligence agencies are doing their job, that's probably how it should work.
That should have been detected.
That should be the process, right?
Yeah. And then right here, Rootkit Ranger, what's in the news is exactly what Rootkit Ranger said, right? It's basically U.S. government detected weird mail access logs and then contacted Microsoft, and that was essentially it. And that's the official story. Let's roll with it. I don't believe it personally, and that's okay. I'm not going to go all Alex Jones and get weird and wait for a meteor to come down and take us out because I have to pay billions in lawsuits.
No, I believe it. 'cause it's
No,
like
everyone
you're-
stop. That was an incredibly good Alex
Yeah,
joke.
It was.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yes, it was.
I was hoping somebody would pick up on that.
Yeah.
I'm practicing
Now
it
that I
in the
know I
woods in the
need
tent.
to do
By
that.
the way,
Totally.
you look fantastic as well. All right, Mike, what is your take on this? Your hot take?
My hot take, honestly, is that there's one other option I think we're not thinking of, which has happened with tokens in the past, and that's GitHub. That it was somebody stupidly posted it up to GitHub, tried to pull it down before somebody else got a hold of the access to it all. What gets me is that you've got different people suggesting different things, security of key management systems, saying the certificate authority is hacked. One of the things that's been pointed out is that there's still no CVE for whatever this bug was.
Yeah.
So Microsoft's really trying to keep this close to their chest. So it's either something really, really brilliant, or, as we've seen plenty of times in our field, really, really stupidly simple that they did to go ahead and pull this off.
And I love that approach. If you have a choice of conspiracy or stupidity, choose stupidity every single time.
I mean,
right?
everyone knows Hanlon's razor. Never attribute to malice what can be explained by stupidity.
Yep.
I often the quote that I use related to that is Ghostbusters when they're the original Ghostbusters when they're talking about how they built the tower, and he's like, this guy was either a certified genius or an authentic wacko. Like that, it's like, that's it. That's what it is.
Why not both?
Yeah,
All right,
I think they're mutually exclusive, right?
Cameron, your thoughts on this?
So I'm wondering, like, to what extent this is being actively investigated, because it says in the article, for example, since identification on June 16th, a month ago, how many potential compromises are there that absolutely no one has looked into besides the one that we've heard of?
And I think that's a good point, because I think they said that they found the one key and they shut that key down. There's not a lot of conversation about, okay, there was these one key that was used in these 25 orgs. Were there other keys?
Oh.
And there's two articles that say, a month ago this happened. We caught one instance of it.
Yeah.
It's kind of scary.
In that timeline, I think it's time for a good divergence to talk about that. I think Jake said that the timeline was kind of, they caught it relatively quickly. And like knowing Jake and kind of channeling the way he thinks, which is a terrifying thing to do. He like looking at the level of logging, the level of things that you would have to be able to detect this attack, kind of like what we were just talking about. I'm surprised it was caught at all, like whatsoever. And even if that was fast, what was it, Cameron? Was it a month that they had access that we know of for that specific key? I can't remember.
So it says they identified it on June 16th. I don't see how long it was active before they claim to have identified it.
Yeah. So that is a terrifying timeline, right? All right. So here we got ISO said not necessarily bug, internal Microsoft feature. If nobody outside of Microsoft could pull it off, then what country might these people be located? It does indeed remain a mystery. And I think we know a couple of United States agencies that were hit. I don't think we got the full list of 25 orgs, and I don't expect, and nor would I ever want Microsoft to give us the full list of all the organizations that we're
U.S.
talking about.
state and commerce departments are the only ones they're claiming right now.
There was also some other what was it, like lobbyists and some other stuff related to China that I think were part of it as well. Also, that brought up logging and how there wasn't any logs for them and other things like that.
So do we want to pivot into the logging conversation, y'all?
Yeah,
I think
I don't get a hot take.
No, you know hot takes.
No, you guys are regular hosts. Let's go ahead.
Listen, okay.
Ralph, what is your hot take on this?
Microsoft Gov they're not going to do it. They're going to cancel the contract. They're going AWS.
I disagree. We'll circle back. Corey, what's your thought?
Okay, so first of all, I think ISO nailed it. I think that the concept, one thing we didn't discuss would be a potential insider, not necessarily like an insider threat, but we all know that the MO of a lot of these threat actors, mostly North Korean threat actors, is to get hired. That's what they do. They get hired. And we know that when you're running a cloud infrastructure, it's all based on Popsicle 6 and glue because it has to be, because it's all Active Directory at the end of the day, right? So yeah. I feel like if you're running a cloud infrastructure, you might need to outsource some of your dev and admin work, and it's really tricky to control the permissions of keys and things like that. Like, that's my theory for how this happened. It's like, basically a developer or a resource of some kind who's either malicious or unintentionally, insider threat, disclosed keys that were required for them to be able to, provision web app services or whatever. And oops, we accidentally gave out the admin keys. So that's my theory. But the other thing I wanted to joke about, John, is your conspiracy. I do think this one is legitimately possible that like a random person just detected it. Because if you're just browsing your account properties in Office 365 and it's like show current logins and you click it and it's like Shenzhen, China, and you're like, that's not good. Like I could see it. I could see it for sure. Like I could see, you just look at your current logins and it says like you are logged in from,
and there's some
name.
Chinese hacker who's in it. Like, see, but I can't handle like in my head. I can't like rectify the two things, right? One, the level of sophistication for this attack, and then if all of a sudden they're like, yeah, just connect to it directly from a Wuhan IP address. It's like those two things don't match, right? Like there's something.
Fair. That's fair.
There's
but
something.
I mean,
it's like you just did black magic, and now you're doing a direct connection from China.
Maybe
like,
they're just being
but
brazen.
you're assuming black magic, but I don't think it necessarily has to be black magic. I think it could just be we have this agent working at Microsoft. They just give us whatever they can get. Like it's like the overemployment thing. It's like, oh yeah, I have 2 jobs. One of them is outsourced to India through people that I don't, really know, and I just give them access to my work email, and they just do my job for me and take 50% of the money or whatever. Like, it could just be a foreign agent gets hired at Microsoft. They just give their access to whoever. They just say like, hey, I went on GitHub on the internal GitLab and I found some keys. Here they are. Like I don't know what they are.
Yeah,
but, like,
it just
check
hands
it
them
out.
over.
Yeah, that's a theory. I mean, this is totally speculation, but.
By the way, Ralph, I just wanted to let you know that your whole theory about Microsoft losing the contract was shot by Flackfest, who completely destroyed your argument with like Occam's razor level logic. Flackfest said they can't leave Microsoft. None of their Excel macros will work in Google Apps.
I mean, he's totally right. I mean, it was flawed from the beginning, but it felt good.
It did. It did feel good.
It is funny though that they said like the State Department said like we take our vendors' security very seriously. It's like, are you just saying that? Because I feel like export grade, like there's a lot of history there.
There's a lot there.
Well, one other thing what's great about that is it very much reminds me of when you owe the bank $1,000, it's your problem. If you owe the bank $1 billion, it's their problem.
Yes.
It's kind of like what you're hearing with Microsoft. It's like, if it's a small security, we're gonna even SolarWinds, like we're gonna step on them. Microsoft. Well, there's a lot of challenges in security.
Cloud is hard, okay?
You can
I would love to be the analyst that has to go brief Joe Biden on this. Like, Joe Biden's probably just saying, not to get political, but he's probably just saying, hey, can we just fire them and not use them? And they're like, actually, Mr. President, there's this thing called macros in documents.
Yeah.
What the hell's a macro? It's pretty much what runs the entire country.
So how you get your email, you won't get your email anymore. Okay?
Yeah, that just won't work.
I will say that's exactly right. Like this is a good one. This is going to bubble up really high because you're talking about something very simple, which is email. There's no cloud access, keys, and like it's not that complicated. It's basically like, okay, what were they after? Your email, sir. Oh my God. Not my 10%. Not my 10% off at ice cream parlor codes. Get this.
I got a plan. We're putting emails in a server in a closet. All right.
That's it. Why don't we just have people print them out and bring them to them? Like that's
wait. I think you're onto something. Okay, so hear me out. This is crazy. All right, we're gonna take the cloud email, and we're gonna configure it onto like a device that you put on it's like a shelf, but it's a rack, and then we're gonna put it in the office, and you'll connect to it that way, and we'll avoid all this cloud.
That theory will never
getting some
fly.
Silicon Valley vibes right now, Ian.
Yeah. I don't know.
There's a
Ian, we have an open.
We got to call out Mindy Green's quote. We're making Joe Biden's old, right? And Mindy said he probably knows what macros are, giving his age and all. He probably was like, oh, yeah, macros. That makes sense. I remember macros in my 40s. Oh, dear God.
It was the only way I could read that Excel document.
He's like,
Oh,
macros?
my God.
Oh, yeah. Continue, proceed.
So
we haven't shut those down yet? No, Mr. President. Good God.
We need them. So you
I'll
guys
tell you
want
what,
to
Jack.
talk about those? Talk about the logging that wasn't happening. So
Okay, now we got to pivot to the logging. Okay.
Yeah, there's one other piece of that. So there was some other customers that thought or suspected this intrusion, right? And so these weren't necessarily at the State Department. Now, they tried to go look at this and to investigate it, and the logs just weren't there. And they were like, oh, you didn't pay for the big, expensive license, right? So that is kind of the debate, right? Should Microsoft give that up, or
can we pause that for just a second, because we do have to go to that? But Hackcar said a Microsoft employee copied and pasted the keys into ChatGPT. I think he has it wrong. I think there was a Chinese hacker that was like, ChatGPT, what are the keys for like creating access tokens? And ChatGPT indexed it somewhere. It was like, here it is, and they're like, is that?
God, that's way too plausible. It's so plausible.
I'm asking ChatGPT right now. I have to know.
Yeah, you have to go find
That's
out.
what they fixed. That's what they fixed, by the way.
Yeah, they fixed that one. But let's go back to the logs. Ian, you got something.
Well, no, but on that note, like, let's put the tinfoil hat on for a minute, straighten it out, right? Everyone's given these large language model chat programs guff for training on their data. Well, what does Microsoft own? Microsoft owns GitHub. So that's their data. Let's train on it. Not realizing that one of their interns had uploaded the code and certificates that would allow them to do this into ChatGPT, which, who's the largest investor in ChatGPT? This is Microsoft turtles all the way down.
Turns out the hacker was ourselves the whole time.
Good job. Well, I feel like we succeeded. I mean, that was my goal.
All right.
So
let's go to the logging, because
so
this
here's
pisses me off.
Yeah,
we got to have a condensed shirt that says this. We have to start a movement in the community. The logging we need to protect ourselves should never be something that we have to pay for. Like, there shouldn't be like, if you're just going to pay for EL level 3, you get shit logs. If you pay 5, you're going to get the logs that you need. That is like going into a house and being like, oh, you want smoke detectors? Yeah, that's going to be an extra $150,000. Like, logging is essential. It should be like a commodity. It should be like water. It should be like air. It should be like I flush my toilet and then magically poop disappears, which after camping, that's amazing to me. I don't think that pricing logging should never be associated with pricing at all.
So you know how like in cryptocurrency you have the whole not your keys, not your crypto thing? So let's just say not your logs, not your security. Like, that's just the fact. Like, if you don't have the logs, it's not your security program. It's someone else's. Like, I really like, I agree with John, but I guess what I would say is like, I think this is just hitting on a hot button issue, which has been a thing forever with Office 365 since it came out, which was, you want logs? Well, that's complicated. Either we don't have them, you have to pay out the wazoo for them. The format's terrible. The extractions, like, it's a long running issue in the Microsoft community. And like, I think this might just be the straw that breaks the camel's back. It's like the EDR thing. We need to all push back as a community and say, here is, we're going to move to freaking Rackspace hosted exchange. We're going to bring it back. Like, if you don't fix this, like, we are going to go back to Lotus Notes. Like you have to like, I think we have to push back as a community and say like, it's important enough that we're shifting our business use cases to match it, including switching off of your platform that doesn't support logging to the level that we expect. Like, I think we need to all agree to that.
But here's the thing that and I agree with everything about that. But here's the thing that I am guessing is going to happen, right? Whenever you're looking at like, I'm going to look at the RSA breach. Years and years and years ago, RSA was compromised via poison ivy that was loaded in an Excel spreadsheet in a macro, and the attackers pivoted and they were able to get access to all of the different ACS. No, is it .se? I can't remember what it was. I think it was ACS files that the newer versions were XML. That was basically the seed values for every single RSA token on the face of the planet. Okay, that is and was a catastrophic compromise of RSA. Right, that was their core business, was two-factor authentication across the board. That was like their primary claim to fame. Everywhere that you went had those little RSA tokens. And the attackers used those RSA tokens to compromise defense contractors. Now, whenever people went to RSA and they said, holy crap, we want new XML files for all of our seed tokens, for all of our RSA tokens, unless you were the absolute tippy top defense contractor or United States government, they told you to pound sand. They were like, you can buy more. And they were in a position in the market where they could effectively tell their customers, sure, all the stuff that we do to secure you is completely compromised by the Chinese, but we don't care. Pay us more money. And I'm afraid when you're looking at something like this with Microsoft, like when we start talking about the conversation of trying to push Microsoft to give us the security logs that we need to properly secure our environment, my fear is deep down that Microsoft's just going to tell us all to pound sand. Very similar to what happened in the RSA breach.
I would agree with you on that, John. I also want to add in a couple of extra thoughts onto that. Number one, the fact that Microsoft's not the only one that's doing this with logs. It's a pain in the butt from a blue side to go ahead and find out what logs you need and what data you need as it is. The second problem that we run into is running into situations with where we're storing the logs. Yeah, maybe they'll give you the logs, but you've got to store it off on something else like a Splunk instance or a Sentinel instance where you've got to pay for the ingestion fees.
Yeah.
The final thing about the logs is that if these logs were buried so hard, why is it that I personally have gotten 5 different companies saying, if you would have had our product, we would have been able to have detected this? It goes to show, and I've been on a rant at times on social media on this, about how much we are insecure because of the security companies and the way that they're doing things to us at this point in time. That it's just a profit center for them as opposed to really giving a rat's butt about security.
Yeah.
And this is just another way. I mean, it's going to fall by the wayside
You're
eventually
basically saying that they're going to find a way to make money off of this. They're going to be like, oh, you want the logs? Absolutely. You can have all the logs for free. However, they have to be stored over here in Microsoft Azure.
Well, when it comes to the storage thing, I will push that back on that a little bit because I mean, I guess you could argue it should be available for you to take offline and index however you choose for free as base level. Like if I sign up for a trial Office 365 account, I should be able to take that and put it in my own personal elk, and that's fine. When it comes to corporate level, corporations should be able to decide, do I want to pay for this infrastructure on my own? Do I want to pay for Sentinel, or do I want to pay for Elk or Splunk or whatever? Or do I want to just pay for Microsoft to tell me when, Defender for email or whatever, they have like 50 Defenders. So like, I feel like that's a decision people should be able to make. But like at the end of the day, that does cost money. You can't, like, I get that Microsoft can't just, it would be bad if they were just like, oh yeah, we just store all of our logs for all of our customers all the time, 90-day rolling window. Like, well, that's a little sketchy too, because you don't want Microsoft to have their hands on like all of your emails forever without, paying for anything or whatever.
But I still think I would be okay with that if Microsoft's like, look, we're going to store all the logs that are required. We're going to store it for 1 week and then they're gone. If you want to get those logs off and you want to dump them to Elastic, you want to dump them to Splunk, you want to dump them to Chronicle, which I think would be awesome. If you want to do that, whatever it is you want to do with them, they're going to be there. We aren't going to store them forever, but we do have plans where you can get them. Then I agree with you. It's like, then at least you have an opportunity to make an informed decision. And at that point, I believe Microsoft could totally wash their hands and be like, we give you the logs you want. You got to get them off our system or transfer them someplace else. But they're at least going to be there for some window of time for their customers to be able to get what they need out of it.
Yes. And they clearly they think they have it because they're just telling people, I mean, I don't know if it's just the PR and legal departments, but they are telling people like, we'll tell you if you're hacked. It's like, okay, so you guys know then? Like you have the logs.
Whoa. We haven't even talked about the legal ramifications.
We'll tell you when you're hacked.
Like the legal ramifications. Now Microsoft saying that, I'm wondering like how many, like we asked the question, how many more other than the 25 organizations that were compromised? What if there's other corporations that are compromised and literally Microsoft's stance was, don't worry, we'll tell you, and they miss that. That could be.
It's like a ransomware group. They're like, we'll tell you. We'll post it when you're hacked. Just to, here's where you should email us to take it down. We'll tell you though. Don't worry.
Not a lawyer, but have played one on TV occasionally, right? The thing that I find really interesting about this is Microsoft can go back and say, hey, yeah, listen, we can hold on to your logs, but then at some point, we are responsible to deliver them to law enforcement, and we have to spin up a whole nother wing for legal requests.
Yep.
Whereas right now we can say, we don't keep those logs. That's based on the customer doing it. So
that's true.
I would bet any amount of money that Microsoft will continue to push back on that, because just like Apple having to unencrypt
liability,
they're like, This we'd have to spend $1 billion a year and staff people just to do this. So I don't.
And we're talking about like conspiracy theories and the racket of the security industry, which it really is kind of that way. I think Shikit summed it up the best. Said, "I wanted to set up monitoring of cloud logs from Azure files and analyze them with Rita, but every bit pulled down would incur additional transfer costs. Like if you're moving it from cloud provider to cloud provider, it's transfer costs upon transfer costs upon storage costs.
You can't leave us.
Yeah, you'll never ever leave us."
Well, this is really the comment that I had up on the screen there for a second. Russell solved it with capitalism right here. You just pay Microsoft for the logs, and you pay Splunk to store them. It's
Well, also, you have to pay, Microsoft to even get the log, to transfer the log.
And then you got to pay someone to read the logs.
There was only somebody we could have to wade through the logs.
Wade through the logs. I feel like you've been summoned, but
I think that on the security industry side of things, just to give one more hot take there, I think it's basically let's just say 25, maybe 50% of the security industry is solely based on just making things that Microsoft should have fixed from the beginning. Basic. Okay, let's talk about what is an internal pen test. It's just showing everyone how they set up Microsoft wrong. That's basically what it is. If it was possible to secure AD from the beginning, we wouldn't have internal pen testing. We would just have assumed compromise. If genuinely, for years, my entire career has been telling customers, Microsoft, what are you going to do? That's how we got DA for the 18th time. So that is the whole, or not the whole, that is a huge chunk of the security industry. Oh, your endpoints aren't secure? Well, here's EDR. Oh, your cloud isn't secure? Well, here's Defender for cloud. That's the whole, it's a decent chunk of the security industry is band-aiding over what other vendors are doing wrong.
Well, and Blackfest, who's just on fire today, said the internet was invented by hippies. Security was invented by private equity. And Ian, what's your quote about measurement?
The measurement quote. And whenever I get asked for it, I always forget. But yeah, it's tell me how someone is measured, or show me how someone. That's how I mess it up. Show me how someone is measured, and I will tell you how they'll behave. So yeah, if you're measured on features and sales and upselling the customer, you're not gonna give away stuff for the sake of security.
And Cisco was way ahead of the curve, right? I mean, I remember, kind of taking this analogy and giving an idea, just, how the security industry looks at this stuff. There was this module from Cisco years ago. It was their Identity and Access Management Suite. And you would think that would be one tool, but it wasn't. Identity, it wasn't Cisco, it was IBM. IBM's Identity Suite. And then there was an Access Suite. And then there was a Management Suite. In order to make it all work, you had to buy all three, like Voltron, to bring them together. None of them would work in and of themselves, but you had to purchase each individual component separately with a different license to make that whole thing work. And that's not abnormal in this industry at all. It's
I think it's a reflection of our values as a collective. Not that I'm a CSO for a large company, but truthfully, as we've seen from breaches over the years, it all blows over in a week, 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
I guarantee you, Microsoft is not seeing a drop in their signups for Office 365. There's no way.
You know that Microsoft CERT right now, there's executives that are all right, here's what we need you all to do. We need you to find a 0-day in a Google suite or an Amazon suite, or we need to find a breach in someone else that makes the news, that buries this news.
And in their press release, they never said 0-day. They said No, they said there was an issue, a slight problem that happened. Pretty much, they never said vulnerability or 0-day.
And that's funny because on some level, reading between the lines, I guess it's a good thing. But on another level, it's way worse. It's so much worse to have this be a design feature or a big organizational business logic flaw more than just there was a bug, it was an open bucket, we fixed it. That's more comforting to me than we don't know how the key was leaked. It was an intended design feature, and we don't really have that great of logs, but we'll tell you if you're hacked. It just sounds like your parents being don't ask, but we have a dog now. You're just
That's always been the story between security, right? Is it's always balanced between, are you secure or are you functional and accessible to the regular layman to access something, right?
Yeah.
And I just got an email just the other day from my mom saying HCA Healthcare was hacked, and here's the list of things that were exposed. I wrote her back and I said, you know what it took me to get access to my daughter's digital healthcare records? Just her name and her date of birth and a checkbox that said, pretty please, yes, do you swear that you should have access to this? And they just gave me access to it.
Oof.
So it's functionality with
Yeah,
security.
it's a
You want to be
huge feature that you
functional
can
and
access
accessible.
Listen, if you're a diplomat working for the State Department, you got to be able to get to your email from China. I mean, that's like it's like it sounds stupid, but legitimately, there's like the guy who does email for the State Department's like, dude, Office 365 is amazing. These people travel all over the world. They can access their email from anywhere, from any device. Like that's a feature, and we have to, as a community, say, okay, is it worth the price? Like allowing access from everywhere. You are a State Department employee, so I guess you are flying, but like, can't you just VPN back through the White House or whatever? Like, I don't know. It's just
all right.
I do want to go back to one thing, John, that you said, because I just got to poke fun at a company. You're like, I'm imagining in that cert room, right? And they're like, all right, everybody, all right, go find Google Suite. All right, Jim, you on that? Find that 0-day in Google Suite. All right, Bob over here. Yeah, I want you to get in on get on the AWS stuff. You got it? Good. And someone goes, hey, should we check on Oracle Cloud? No, we're good.
Who?
No, don't. They're already dead. No, I'm joking.
You're kicking them
So
out.
I've
Dude,
got,
all
I've
the
got a final
CSOs.
question, and this is the big question, right? And we have to end on this because there have been some articles that I've been reading where people are like, well, this is the problem with cloud security. It's going to have these insecurities. It's going to have this. My fear, once again, and I brought this up multiple times on the show, and I want to make sure that we bring it up here again, is there are executives now that are having conversations that are like, well, should we get rid of Office 365 and just go back to on-prem Exchange? Because it seems like that's more secure.
We told them
No. It's
There
not.
also isn't logging. There still isn't logging. It's no different.
Yeah, the logging still sucks. It's like, do you have your logs for access to Exchange? Yes. Does it have everything we need? No. You're going to need your IIS logs. You're also going to need your Active Directory logs. You're going to have to correlate and fuse those logs to tell you the story of what actually happened. It's a train wreck, but that's not more secure than this. And this gets into the kind of the helplessness that I feel the industry is kind of falling into right now. Is what the hell do you do as a consumer? Like you used to be able to do all kinds of duct tape, baling wire, redneck engineering to do cool security things for your Exchange environment if you were so inclined. But now with like Office 365, you're pretty much at the whim of whatever it is Microsoft feels that they will give you. So what do you do?
That's the cloud. That's the cloud in a nutshell.
That is cloud, but
that is the trade-off you make.
If you know,
that's totally the trade-off you make, and that's each individual company's decision. Do we go to fast mail and get 10 accounts and call it done, or do we build a squirrel mail? You know what I mean? Like,
but I was there, Corey, at the beginning, where literally people were like literally stitching together their own email servers.
Oh yeah, you just got
scratch in the basement.
What is it? Postgres or no? What was the? I forget the Linux.
Postman.
Yeah.
Post or Dove?
No,
Dove?
like the original. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, it doesn't matter. But
yeah. So the one thing I did want to bring up, and I brought up this before, is like gets back to like the cryptocurrency thing, which is not your key is not your crypto, right? It's the same with any kind of cloud service, right? If you're uploading any data and you don't have control over the key, then anyone at Microsoft or anyone who gets access to their systems can read and access that data.
That's
right?
a feature.
That's just the world we live
it's seriously
in.
a feature.
That's
the fact that you can.
We call security SSL, right? We encrypt every connection. I'm like, that's transit encryption, not at rest. Right. And a lot of people just, but we're not there yet. Some services do offer that. But I will say, though, that it does come with trade-offs, right? You want that one search bar to search your thousands of SharePoint files.
And it's going to do just that thing.
Yeah.
So I've got a hot take, an actual hot take, not just making a joke. So I'm even going to main screen myself for this. Here's the thing. This is operating as designed and nothing will change. So John's saying like, will are executives having the conversation of going back on prem? If they have a risk management team, they might bring it up, but they're not. And they are going through and looking at this from a purely business and risk perspective. Whereas when they had it on prem for years, Microsoft could go, sorry, like if you have a breach, that's on you, right?
Shifting the
You've gotta go figure it out.
responsibility. Totally. Yeah.
So any breach that's going to happen, the business people are like, oh, so that's going to be on Microsoft and we can go back to them to make that whole. And we're only thinking in quarters anyway because we're publicly traded. Sounds great. Whatever.
Oh, and CSO's love will tell you if you're hacked. That is like the exact sentence they want to hear.
They want to hear that every day.
Right? Like that's what they want. I mean, obviously we don't. But
Can we have that message in a single pane of glass, Corey? Like,
Yes. So okay, one more hot take. Can we talk about the most surprising part of this whole story, that there was no classified information disclosed?
Yeah.
That no one had classified info in their email?
No, because they weren't. So classified stuff is different.
So.
They do have classified sections of Microsoft.
But
right?
even if there was
They have
classified data that was exposed to this, I would be surprised if at this early that they would release that publicly.
Well, no, they specifically said it wasn't. The State Department said no classified data was accessed. That's what I'm saying. Like that is the shocking part.
I'll go down a little bit of a thought rabbit hole with that. Is that you don't need classified information to have been exposed.
Classified information
for it to be a devastating thing to happen, right? If this group is actually looking to recruit somebody, blacklist somebody, there are plenty of people in government organizations that use their emails. As we've seen as pen testers all the time, they sign up with their corporate emails to services that they shouldn't, and those services get breached. There's been reports of all sorts of services where people are using government emails, .mil emails, to sign up for nefarious sites so that their spouses or family won't find out. You have access to their emails and you find that sort of stuff in there. That's a possibility to blacklist somebody, to recruit them for further access.
You've also got one other thing in there. The State Department said no classified information has been breached. The State Department. We don't know what other groups got breached and what other classified information got taken from there. State Department could have been free and clear as far as classified information goes. Who knows about some of these others that were
and we know
accessed.
business email compromise is a huge vector. Like when you start getting an email from the State Department that says send me this or do me this, it's going to be like, yeah, we should probably do it. So it is terrifying, when you talk about that email being compromised.
So James is incredibly polite.
Isn't he?
He's just politely tapping it. I have something. Yeah. So James, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, so we've ranted about the added cost to logging within Microsoft and with any of the other cloud services, but just the fact that Microsoft by default doesn't even turn on the audit logging. Every client I've taken on, it's been, oh hey, you don't have audit logging. So nothing that's happened in the past really actually exists. So we'll turn this on, and in probably 24 hours, you're going to have something useful. And then I had to double check because, the licensing tiers are ridiculous. Microsoft, they promote the E5 as like, okay, it's the end all be all, but then they tell companies that, hey, if you have less than 300 users, which is the bulk of the clients that I work with, they use Business Premium and it doesn't have the enhanced logging. And it's like, well, what's the difference between the company that has 300 users and the company that has 301 users?
So it just doesn't even offer it as an option for that.
No, I mean, it would be an add-on, but the cost, and I'd have to sit there and go through the licensing hell again. But
it's a full thing. Yeah.
So somebody Josh Run said that audit logging is turned on by default now. I'm really hoping so. I've actually got an assessment scheduled this week with a client. So
security defaults is now turned on by default on your tenants. It used to not be, and that actually enables a lot of things that were not previously enabled by default. One thing it does is two-factor authentication.
So I still come back to when we're talking about Microsoft and logging, that people are like expecting Microsoft to get it right. Understand that Microsoft went decades before they gave us Sysmon, and Sysmon was just a cute little add-on that Mark Rosanovich wrote. to add in. I mean, we should not hold our breath for Microsoft to get logging right.
Yes,
I mean, I think
Everett's hot
that
take is
people-
perfect.
Yeah.
Microsoft charging to fix the issues caused by Microsoft makes complete sense. It's kind of like the police investigating. It's like, yeah, we've gotten some reports of police brutality. We're investigating it. It's like,
We're investigating.
hold on, aren't you the one that beat someone up like last week? Yeah, I saw no wrongdoing. Okay, like good job, we
I'll
did
get to the
it.
bottom.
Like
Blackfest just brought up another thing. It would apply to new tenants, but existing tenants will still need to turn it on. Which,
Yeah. That
So,
is even,
okay.
Yes, if you're an
which
old
just
tenant,
feels like group policy preference patch for me. Like
I
it's
have
like,
a
well,
even
even
the-
the problem in group policy preference files. It's like, so you removed all the bad encrypted passwords.
Yeah.
We fixed it moving forward. It's just
Well, so here's a question I have, and I don't really know. Is it different for the when the State Department signs up for Microsoft 365? Are they just signing up for the business trial? Like, are they, I feel
laugh, but
like
you know how many licenses you
that
get
really
free?
what-
Like
like,
25,
okay,
dude. You just-
on a high level though, is the government can set okay, if you are. These are the requirements. You have to have logging. You have to they can say this for all government customers, right? And they can set this as like a
Yes,
regulatory requirement, right?
no way in hell. No way in hell. I mean, whenever you're working inside of like the government on unclassified and even the classified side, even if I'll just go back to the Department of Interior, right? You could say Department of Interior does X, Y, and Z, and that's mineral resource management, that's forestry, that's all kinds of different departments, and they all hate each other, right? Like that's one of the things. Like if you're in a meeting and you got a whole bunch of government heads of security or IT, and someone stands up and says it's a good idea to do X, Y, and Z, there's going to be somebody in a different group that will say, well, that's just stupid. And they will fight about that for months because it's not about the technical merits. It's going to be about the personality. It's going to be about the history. It's going to be about who did what to whose network when.
You know how long I've been here?
Oh my God, yes, that too, right? So you can't just globally just say this is what the settings are going to be because they all disagree with each other. And some organization has to go first and say that this is what we think the setting should be. And then immediately there'll be other department heads that start fighting it. And if you get into the classified world, it's even worse, right? The FBI says something, the CIA has got to hate it. And the NSA is going to be quiet for months, and then they're going to come up with something completely different right before DISA does. And then DISA is going to get pissed because 99% of what they were going to say, the NSA said it. And then they get it, like, seriously, like working in the government on security things is an absolute fiasco.
It's funny because on the classified networks, there's separate classified networks to separate the classified networks.
And,
and they're like, no, you can't talk on this one.
No, and they're more afraid of each other. I mean, we get into SABI and TSABI interoperability between classified networks, right? So, you know, this is a very big problem where we've had like years whenever I've been doing this, like going in and saying, this is a best practice, and people will fight you tooth and nail. Like even password complexity. I remember not in DOD, not in IC, not in unclassified government, but even in unclassed organizations, you would say, okay, well, you should really have passwords that are longer than 8 characters. And they're like, well, PCI said that 8 characters is fine up until last year. It's absolutely insanity at all levels.
Can
It's
we get like an executive order that just says like, y'all got to have logs? Like that's the whole order. Like it just says like
you have the
from
old
here-
circular A130 that listed out all kinds of
and
security
you know
stuff
how many
as an example.
companies? You know how many companies will show up knocking on the door like, "We do logs for the government. We're the best. Hire us. We got the
Logs-
new
We're
product." Dude, they will
completely
come up with the woodwork.
compliant.
I got this email about
Yes.
this company called Logs4j. It looks pretty good. I think we should hire them.
I think John said it very well. And if you haven't worked in the government, I have done contracting. I did it for almost a decade in another life. But it's when you see the level of kind of vindictiveness between even just departments or even just teams within the same department trying to build their own little empires and control what goes on so that they can do things the way they want to, and they'll fight everybody around it. I always explain to people who haven't worked in the government, there's this outside perception that the government is made up of the best and brightest, of people who want to cooperate and actually accomplish the overall mission and goal. And it cannot be further from the truth. You don't have the best and brightest getting every job. You do have really good people in there doing their good work, but there are people at the higher levels that will just They'll just
Right.
clash on things, and nothing will get done for 6 months, 12 months, 18 months.
And I, when we're looking at these different organizations and how I think there's an XKCD comic that's talking about standards, right? And just how it devolves constantly. And, let's talk about cloud computing. As, looking at this and talking to executives over the years, for a long time, a ton of executives look at the cloud and they love the cloud, not just because of, we can take the responsibility and the risk and we can put it on Microsoft or Google or whoever, but it was going to kill a lot of these arguments because it was no longer going to be a conversation of this department wants this and this department wants that and this department wants this. Microsoft Office 365 has X, and that's what you all are getting. And I don't need you to argue about it. And I'd like to think that 70% of, moving to the cloud for executives was getting past the petty squabbles of IT infrastructure, which they were wrong, by the way, but I can see how they wanted to head that way for sure.
We'll have to pour one out for all the Microsoft cloud sales reps that will have to miss their Mercedes payments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're not missing nothing.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that.
So,
Here's your comic.
I want to kind of re-echo what Ian said. When you're looking at this and you're thinking that you need to change your infrastructure because of security, if you think you can do it better, you can't. If you try to do this on your own, you're going to screw it up. And kind of further taking what Ian said, the narrative is fundamentally different. If you have your own Exchange server and you build that Exchange server and you make it as secure as you possibly can and you get popped, you own it completely, 100%. The narrative is you got popped. For these 25 organizations, the narrative isn't that they got popped. The narrative is Microsoft had a vulnerability and they were a victim. There are 25 directors of IT in these organizations that are sitting back, sipping on a margarita and thinking, thank God this isn't my problem today.
Yep.
And that's the narrative. And that's the story for moving to the cloud.
Yeah. No, you're right. 100% right.
It's only
I keep going back because it's showing the gray in my beard. These old, tired kind of business terms, and there was one that I thought of earlier when people were kind of joking around about Microsoft charging for a fix for something they created. That's on brand. There's a phrase around consulting. And that's really what we're talking about, where it's like if you can't make money solving the problem, there's great money in continuing the problem or something like that.
And that's, you just summed up, and I think you just said what Corey said earlier, that's the entire security industry.
Yeah.
So every time this bad shit happens and you start to feel bad, just remember, you've got to, this Christmas, send off another thank you card to Microsoft and to China for keeping us all employed.
Aww.
And with that,
I like how this show was just the Microsoft episode. Like it's all one bug.
Yeah, just one. That's it.
Well, it was
thanks for attending, everybody.
It was a doozy.